Afternoon, everyone. My name is Marissa Tokarski, and I serve on the Central PA MLK Day of Service Committee, along with Mike Walsh, Patty Kim, and other members of our Harrisburg area. As part of today's overall Day of Service, we've been hosting a series of discussions, and this one will fall right in line with that. Our overall theme is Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and I think that will tie in perfectly to what we're going to talk about here shortly. We are going to record today's session so we can post on our social media as well as website, just so we can further get the word out about this particular issue right here in Central PA. So we do have a handful of different individuals who will be speaking today. So to go ahead and kick things off, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Darrel. So if you would like to introduce yourself as well as some of the other members of your team, that would be great. Darrel will go ahead then and lead us through the first part of the discussion. And then a little bit later, we will have Rhonda from the Harrisburg YWCA provide commentary as well. So Darrel, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thanks Marissa, and thanks so much for all of you that are joining in. So as Marissa said, my name is Darrel Reinford. I'm Executive Director of Christian Churches United of the Tri-County area. So just a little bit about Christian Churches United and why we're part of this conversation about housing. It's Christian Churches United's mission to partner with local churches and encourage them to partner with other community resources to help and love and serve people dealing with homelessness, poverty, and incarceration. And in terms of our specific programs related to homelessness, we have three initiatives. One is called Help Ministries, and another is called Susquehanna Harbor Safe Haven. And then our newest sort of umbrella is called the Compassion Action Network. And I'm happy today to have Aisha Mobley, who's one of our staff members, and also Steve Schwartz. And so they will also share a little bit about what they do at CCU and how they're involved with homeless work. I think it's, as we start off talking about homelessness, one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is there's sort of three ways I think that we can talk about people getting involved in helping those facing the homelessness. One is, the first of all, is actually homeless prevention. And that's one of the things that we try to work at through our Help Ministries program. And particularly in this time of pandemic, you may have seen news reports about those facing eviction. And so that's certainly an area that we want to talk about. Another area then is helping those who are actually homeless. And that may be people on the streets, or it's important to realize also that, you know, there's many folks that are homeless that may be couch surfing and aren't as visible in our community. And then a third piece is actually looking at sort of some of the systemic issues that we have around homelessness and realizing that's really important for people to get involved in those ways as well. But to sort of start off, you know, two things that I would just say right off the beginning, apart from even the work of Christian Churches United, that if you happen to be in a housing crisis or working with someone that's, you know, in a housing crisis, the first resource that I always want to direct people to is 211. That's a phone number that is sort of a referral line for all kinds of services. And one of the reasons that 211 is important here in Dauphin County, or in our area, is that Dauphin County and Cumberland County have somewhat different service systems in terms of serving those who are homeless. And so if you call 211, that can direct you to the right spot within either of those service in either county. And then the other organization that I just want to point out in Dauphin County is the Capital Area Coalition on Homelessness. And you know, they're sort of an umbrella organization of a whole variety of organizations that are working at the homeless issue. And at some point I'll try to jump in later and I'll put their website in the chat just so people can see that. But the coalition is just a really important resource in our community for those serving Dauphin County. But yeah, jumping, you know, more into Christian Churches United. As I mentioned, we do work in the homeless prevention area, and that is through our Help Ministries office, which is located on 19th Street in Harrisburg. But currently that we're serving folks largely over the phone and through email due to the pandemic. So people do not have to come to our office on 19th Street to get services. But one of the main things that we provide out of that office is rental assistance. And rental assistance can help those that, again, are in danger of being evicted to hopefully keep their housing. It can also help people who are, as I said, in sort of the couch surfing type category, maybe have, don't have permanent housing, but need assistance with a security deposit and first month's rent. So that's a program that can be provided through the help office. It is an application-based program. So it's not like people can just call the office and, get approved for that immediately. There is a process that needs to be gone through. But that is one of the things that's offered at the Help Ministries office. Also, we offer assistance with PPL utility bills. I know there was another session today about utilities, but if folks are behind on their electric bill, that's something that the help office can help out with. And also, we can help with heating fuel here in the winter if someone's using fuel oil to heat. Again, if folks are using UGI, there's a Salvation Army is the place of contact for people who need that assistance. So those are just sort of a rundown of the sort of homeless prevention type activities that Help Ministries provides. We also do then work with folks that are, sort of in need of emergency shelter. Again, as we move into thinking about, or the one other thing I just want to jump back to on rental assistance, and again, this might be something that there will be questions about later. As some people may know, the newest stimulus package did include a significant amount of money for additional rental assistance. We don't know yet exactly how that's going to be made available in Dauphin County. So I can't say for sure that funding for that is going to be available through Help Ministries, but likely that is something that will, some of those funds will likely come through Help Ministries, as well as hopefully some other organizations in the community. So again, right now we're sort of in a little bit of a window where there's not a lot of funding for rental assistance, but once those funds come down through, there should be hopefully a lot of assistance available. So yeah, then jumping to those who maybe are already homeless and how
Darrel, can I
Yep.
just add something?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I was looking up some links. So if you said this and I missed it, I'm sorry, because I tuned out for a minute trying to find those links. But just one of the things we found over the years is that one of the most cost-effective ways to reduce homeless prevention, is trying to capture people before they become homeless. So if you can, if a family goes through a tough time and falls behind on the rent because they had a medical bill or a car breakdown or something, and through community resources, you can find a way to help them get caught up on that $1,000 in rent they're behind. It's so much less traumatic for the family, and it's so much cheaper for the community if we can help them resolve that rental crisis rather than them becoming homeless. I mean, it's obvious, but rather than becoming homeless, losing all their belongings, going into the shelter system, taking a year to get back on their feet. And so these rental assistance funds and homeless prevention programs are really one of the key factors of helping, especially people on the lower end of the pay scale that may not be able to weather maybe a short-term crisis like some middle-class people may be able to. So that's just, it's such an important part of what we do as a community.
Absolutely, and thanks, Steve. Again, I mentioned Steve is the Director of Development at Christian Churches United and has been working in the homeless field for many years as well in his nonprofit work. So has as he said, homeless prevention is the most cost-effective way, oftentimes, of trying to help avoid homelessness, certainly. Jumping to talking about those who are experiencing homelessness, again, Help Ministries is an entry point for women and women with children, families that are experiencing homelessness and need emergency shelter. Generally, we're not the one that provides that shelter. However, during here in the pandemic, we have been working with families, if there's not room in shelters, to use some hotel space if we have that available. But we generally work with 3 shelters, and one of them, again, you'll hear about later from Rhonda at the YWCA. The 2 other shelters in the area serving women and women with children are Shalom House and the Interfaith Family Shelter. So, but the Help Ministries office is sort of the place of intake for any of those folks looking for shelter. And then here in the winter, we are actually running some emergency shelters just to expand space in the winter. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Aisha Mobley. Aisha is our Community Mobilization Coordinator and works with our volunteers as well as with some direct street outreach. And I'm going to have her share a little bit about our winter shelters as well as some of the other outreach that she's works with through the Coalition on Homelessness and CCU. So Aisha, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Darrell. Good afternoon, everyone. I have been trying to respond in the chat to some of your concerns. I'm directing people to Fair Housing Council, to Dauphin County, and then Mid-Penn Legal. I'm hoping that everybody's getting that. Again, like he said, my name is Aisha Mobley, and I am the Community Mobilization Coordinator for Christians for the United. And as far as our street outreach, we are doing it up big, and we have been doing it actually, believe it or not, since April of 2020. While everybody else was shuttered in, we were out there doing the street outreach, our coordinated outreach with CASH, the Coalition, Capital Area Coalition Against Homelessness, since April. Now, in reference to our winter overnight shelters, so the first one I'll talk about is our women's shelter. It's for women and non-binary people. And so we have had about a maximum so far of about 12 to 13 ladies in the night. And so our goal there is to get women out of the cold without a lot of pomp and circumstance and paperwork to hold them up, but to just get them into a nice, dry, warm place overnight. And Allison Long is our coordinator. Our staff is excellent. We're able to get the women into the coordinated outreach through their VSPDATs, get them into the HMIS system so we can actually get them some real help and off the streets. And it's located at 216 State Street at Grace United Methodist. And our doors open at 8 p.m. and lock at 9:30 p.m. Ladies can come in if they are direct referrals from domestic violence shelters like the Y, or if they have a police or ambulance or like some police escort, not ambulance, but a police escort to get back in. So we're very excited. Our donors through Compassion Action Network have made sure that our supplies are always overflowing so the ladies can get underwear and toiletries and a change of clothes and even a coat if they need it. So our men's shelter is located at 1635 North 7th Street, Gospel Fellowship Church, where Minister Jenny Jenkins and Bishop Dallas preside over that church. So our men's shelter, the doors there open a little earlier at 7:30, but still closed at 9:30. We're excited. We've had about a maximum of 8 men so far. And our first night with our first gentleman, that gentleman now has a job. So he's shown us his paperwork. He's been going consistently. So we're glad about that. And he put the word of mouth out there and then helped us pack the house a little bit. So our staff there is great. And our donors, thank you to all the donors through Compassion Action Network that keep us sustained with coffee, clothes, all types of things that the gentlemen need. And again, same services are open to them as well. In reference to our street outreach, the coordinated outreach we do with CASH. So like I said, that happens every Thursdays. We actually serve directly to the tent cities, the encampment sites. One located at 10th and Mulberry Streets, right under there, close to that Mulberry Street Bridge. And then the other one is at PennDOT or Harrisburg, PennDOT, in the grassy areas on your way to PennDOT. There are anywhere from 100 to 200 people in tents, and new people typically go there when they're newly evicted or newly homeless. That's usually where we can find them there. And so our coordinated outreach through CASH, what can I say? That involves the Dauphin County Library van. That van brings Wi-Fi, so the participants, the folks out there can just get Wi-Fi for their phones. They can plug in and charge their phones. They have a computer that they have covered in plastic so they can access the internet. Salvation Army provides us 50 boxes of food, which is like a good week of food. And that is brought through the Mission Mobile Van. We have Valley Youth House there to help with the youth that are homeless. And that's about age 16 to 21. Dauphin County CMU is there. Crisis is there. Veteran services are there through the Y. Trying to think what we've made sure that our folks are able to get, the homeless folks are able to get their taxes done. We had tax services provided. They got their stimulus checks last year and this year. They got their right to vote. They were able to get registered, and we also were able to bring the census to them. The showers, we're located at the showers at the Y. We're able to come in and get showers and more supplies, toiletries, and more helping services because we have a person there as well. So that is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:30 to 10:30. Darrel, am I covering the majority of what you want covered?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great overview. I think, just two things that I want to mention, and just number one about the showers, that's at the YMCA. I know sometimes we use the Y interchangeably, and we have the YWCA and the YMCA. So yeah, we're grateful that Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, as Aisha said, the YMCA has made their showers available. And the other thing, I think that's just important to understand with that whole list of things that Aisha listed off is that, oftentimes people see homeless people out in the street and they sort of assume maybe, oh, there's no help for them or nobody's trying to reach out to them. And I think one of the things that's just important to understand about homelessness is the complexity of the situation for many folks, and to realize that there are services available, but many of those folks just sort of have barriers to really jumping in and working with those services, whether that's from a severe mental health issue or dealing with drug and alcohol, substance abuse. Some don't feel like they can follow sort of whatever guidelines are needed to be involved in programs, and therefore feel more comfortable being out on the street. And one of our goals in our community is to sort of reduce the barriers so that people have programs that they feel like they can participate in. And that's one of our goals with our winter shelters, both for men and women. And we are accepting volunteers to help out at those shelters. Again, we realize here in this time of COVID, it's not an easy thing to go out and volunteer in person, but we do as much as we can in those shelters to keep people safe. Masks are required this year. And I also want to highlight too that the primary winter shelter during this winter for men is at Downtown Daily Bread, and Downtown Daily Bread is just another central focus of homeless services in our community. And so, if people are interested in getting involved, with the homeless population, that's another organization to, sort of look into and be aware of what they do. So yeah, I mean, I think that provides a good summary of, what CCU does. Another thing I'll just say real quickly is, in terms of helping the homeless, a lot of the things that people often think of most quickly are feeding, meals and clothes. And the reality is, those are things that we have pretty well covered in our community. I mean, and if you do want to help with those sorts of things, it's really important to reach out to one of the organizations to see if that is a current need. There's a meal every day of the week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in Harrisburg. And it doesn't mean that we don't sometimes need people to help with those meals, but we don't, generally there's not need for a lot of additional meals. And with clothing, again, Aisha just had a really interesting experience past week where she actually had a homeless gentleman give us a box of gloves and hats to said, hey, we have more than what we need. You can, take these somewhere else. And again, not that it's not important to get winter gear out to the homeless, but as much as you can work through established organizations and ask what their needs are, one of our most unique needs that people don't think about is old cell phones that have been cleared. A lot of the folks can get Wi-Fi in a library, even if they don't have a cell phone plan, if they have a working cell phone. And especially in the time of COVID, when, some places like our help office, even, the doors aren't open for walk-in appointments, having that cell phone service is really key. So, but yeah, I want to give Rhonda some time to talk about the why, and certainly have time for questions. So that's where we'll leave it for now.
Great, thank you all very much. So again, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Rhonda at this time.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invite today. My name is Rhonda Hendrickson. I am the Vice President of Programs over at the YWCA Greater Harrisburg. Under my division are many, many things from our visitation center, our civil legal center, our violence intervention and prevention programs, which are domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, but also and important to today's discussion is our housing and homelessness department. And the YWCA has, for quite some time been one of the largest providers of housing services for women and children in the region. And under our programs, we are serving those women and children and also men in some of our programs. So I don't want to, discount that or give you the wrong impression. We do provide services in many ways to men, including some of our housing programs. But we're serving those who are homeless or nearly homeless, those who are fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking, and also individuals who have been sexually assaulted and just are not safe to remain in their home where they are. We do that through a variety of housing programs. So first, under our violence intervention, we have our domestic violence shelter. We also have a human trafficking shelter. In that realm, we also have transitional housing opportunities that are available for domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking victims. In our housing and homelessness programs, so we have our emergency shelter, which is accessed through Help Ministries and the voucher system in Dauphin County. So that's our crisis 28-day emergency shelter for the homeless. We then have next step housing, such things as bridge housing that can be up to a year for women and children to really, stabilize themselves, work on their goals, and plan for how do I get into permanent housing and be able to sustain myself for the future. We also have transitional housing combined with our rapid rehousing. So what happens there is, let's see, women and children may decide to go from our emergency shelter or our domestic violence shelter into transitional program. That's 4 months of stay. It is a goal-oriented program as well. But from there, they can transition into community-based housing, their own permanent housing, and receive rental assistance and case management services from us to help stabilize them in the community itself. So we're really following them through. And all our programs, by the way, come with intensive case management services. We have what we call our SRO, or single resident occupancy program. It's our own project-based Section 8. So for single women, or I should maybe say women with no children coming with them. And that is actually very long-term housing, and for many of our folks has become permanent housing options. It's not necessarily designed to be a permanent housing option, but it can be. We have a safe haven program for those who are chronically homeless and have a mental health diagnosis. And lastly, we have our permanent housing for individuals with disability. So in that, it has to be one member of that family who has a disability, and then they may, if they're homeless, and they would have to be literally homeless, qualify for that program. And our Safe Haven and our PhD program, the permanent housing for disabilities, are both community-based permanent housing where we provide case management and rental assistance. And again, we call that permanent housing, but it's not meant to be permanent support. It's meant for them to get placed in the community and have an indefinite period of support from us to make sure that they are stabilized in their community housing and ready to, be able to sustain themselves. I think for us, the majority of homelessness is a symptom, as you all, I'm sure, are aware of so many things. And Darrel, you already referred to this, but what we see is these co-occurring, very complex traumas that over the last several years, I have watched the trauma of the women and children and even the men who come to us really increasing exponentially. Not only are they maybe having mental health issues, but there may be substance abuse issues. That may have led to human trafficking, and that may have led to them fleeing and becoming homeless. So we see this compounding of traumas, and our caseworkers really have to spend a lot of time training in many aspects, not just homelessness, in order to be able to work effectively with the populations that we're seeing come through our doors. So it's very complex. We can point to many success stories, but we also see a lot of what I'll call recidivism in the housing and homelessness cycle of individuals coming back in, of individuals sort of having that generational poverty going on, and their family members return. So, I think just to really give our case managers credit for the really tough stuff they work with every day. And then we throw on top of that COVID-19 and a pandemic. So it's really made things challenging. How do we case manage in this world of COVID? How do we make sure that we're providing that intensive support when it's really difficult to necessarily sit face to face and have those really good professional relationships and building trust when sometimes, we pivoted and we're doing services over Zoom, or, we're trying to social distance within an office, and you're this far away from each other, and it sort of takes away a little bit of that closeness you want to create and the trust bonds that you want to build with clients. So I think a lot of what we see are all these co-occurring traumas. And as I mentioned, mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence is absolutely another one at the top of that list. But also systemic inequality really creeps in here. And as we look at MLK and his message and what we honor today, we really think about the inequalities that individuals, especially, people of color, are suffering. Unequal access to safe housing, unequal opportunity within their community to have that safe housing. So we're trying to address all of these things at the Y. And again, I just give kudos to the people who are out there on the front lines doing that work. I mean, I'm sitting behind my desk, so I probably have it pretty easy when I look at it. But our case managers are pretty tough, and they're here to assist. So with that, what do we need? I'm going to agree with Darrel. Like, we have a clothing bank that is just overflowing with clothing, and the community generosity is amazing. We have food. We have plenty of food. The food bank is tremendous support system for us. But the things that we really need, are those things that maybe folks don't anticipate or we can't anticipate. Maybe a gift card that we can run to Walmart or Target and pick up that one thing we forgot to ask for in our wish list. Of course, we always go through hygiene products and linens for twin beds, and that never changes. But we also have this creature we call an in a pinch fund. And our residents and even non-residents who are our clients can apply to that fund for one-time assistance to help them move forward with their goals, whether it's housing, employment. Maybe a nurse needs, somebody's training to be a nurse or a dental hygienist and needs to pass a test or take a test. We can pay for that fee for them. Maybe they need a uniform. We can pay for that through our In a Pinch Fund. So donating financially to the Y and designating it for our In a Pinch Fund or those gift cards are often invaluable for our clients. And so with that, I guess I'll just kind of turn it over back to you, Marissa. I'm not sure if you have questions and answers, but I don't want to just ramble on and on. I could.
No, you're not rambling, but thank you very much. All of what you just shared was extremely insightful. And definitely kind of just added on to what Darrel and the others had said earlier. So at this time, I'd like to throw it open for anybody that does have questions. So please, feel free to continue using that chat feature. I think our chat has been going pretty active during this session. You're sharing different resources that are available for everybody on today's call. But again, if you have any questions specific to the people that have shared today, please feel free to ask them.
I've got a question.
Oh.
I was wondering, it seems like the face of homelessness is getting younger. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts about or seen any trends with more children involved in the homelessness cycle in our area.
At our street outreach to respond, I know Valley Youth House is our go-to, or the Synergy Project. And so they actually aren't on here, but I'd have to say they get them quickly housed. Coming to the street outreaches, we're not really seeing a lot of the young folk. We had one person at the women's shelter that was a young person under 24, is that area of unaccompanied youth. And so we've only had one show up at our women's shelter and none so far at our men's overflow shelter. Just to give you a quick response, but Valley Youth House is our go-to. And there's specific funding geared towards that age group that's very helpful in housing them pretty quickly and taking care of their rent as well.
Yeah, I would say, our go-to is to work collaboratively with Valley Youth House, certainly. I will say what we're seeing more is really an increase in large family sizes looking for shelter that often can be very difficult to navigate systems when you're calling in and asking for housing for, for example, a woman and 5 children. And trying to find the space for that has been challenging. But youth coming in on their own, our human trafficking program actually has some rapid rehousing funds where we can house in the community and permanent housing those between the ages of 18 to 24. So really kind of targeting that age range, and especially doing a lot of outreach for those who are aging out of the foster care system and really sometimes are very susceptible to traffickers, and then we want to make sure we're providing that intervention so they don't get caught up in that cycle.
The other thing that I would say is too that I do think that the youth population is one that is often a hidden population. Again, that they're often ones that are maybe couch surfing and might have a place to stay, that they're not out on the street, but that there's still a lot of unstably housed youth and families, and sort of to Rhonda's point about the large families. Again, I think part of that maybe younger or seeing even younger families or whatever is our affordable housing problem, and that there just is not the housing options that folks on a very low income can afford, especially if they have a large family and need a couple bedrooms. The rents on those units have just continued to increase dramatically in recent years. And so again, that jumps to a little bit what I had said at the beginning, as how we can help in terms of homelessness is also encouraging our politicians to look at the systemic changes that we need to look at to how can we create more affordable housing. How can we work with developers to say, hey, we need this as part of our community. And that's when one of the things that the pandemic has really sort of brought to fore again. Again, the demand, the supply is not there to meet the demand, and that has caused rents to go up again.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I just did a quick look at our annual homeless survey that we do, homelessness survey in Dauphin County. This is very quick off the top of my head, Chad, but in 2014, there were 297 adults as being homeless in a 24-hour period. 99 of those were children. And in 2019, 5 years later, 290 adults, so almost the same number of adults, 120 children, so 20% more. So that kind of speaks to Rhonda's point about family sizes getting larger.
Thanks, Steve. That's helpful.
Yeah, I'll put the link. There's all these surveys and studies. I'll put it in the chat here, and that's what I could find really quick on the fly. But there's a lot more information that could be dug through from our local surveys and studies.
Great, thank you. We actually just had another question come in via chat. Any anticipated numbers for after the moratorium on evictions is lifted?
I can say, and that was actually, I'm glad that that came up. I was going to mention one other group that I want to encourage people to, sort of keep an eye out for and connect with is the Greater Harrisburg Area Tenants United group. And they've been doing a lot of work around during the pandemic and have some really good data about the number of evictions that are coming potentially if a moratorium is lifted. Since September, I know that the number of evictions in Dauphin County is over 1,500, I believe. At least the number of people. I don't know if the number of households. I don't have. I meant to get that data before this the session, but I wasn't able to do that. But there is certainly a great concern, and that was part of the reason I mentioned the rent assistance that is coming down the pike, hopefully. It's certainly my hope that the rent assistance can be provided to some of those folks who have gone through the initial eviction process but haven't actually had to leave their homes yet because of the moratorium. And that's one important thing for people to understand about the moratorium that is in place is it hasn't stopped sort of like the first processes of eviction from happening. Again, many people have been through a district justice hearing where they've been said that they need to pay their back rent or whatever in order to avoid eviction. But due to the moratorium, they have not been able to actually physically be removed. And so that's sort of the final step in that process. So yeah, there's definitely a concern. It could be, hundreds of households. The good thing is just because someone is evicted doesn't mean that they end up, on the street homeless. But again, they may be folks that end up sort of in that unstably housed category where they're jumping from sort of house to house while they try to find something more permanent.
Just a word about the surge in need during the pandemic. Our agency typically would help about 200 families a year, 200 households a year avoid homelessness through rental assistance, like work out a situation where they were, likely going to be evicted without some help. And so that's about 16 households a month. From July to November, when we had some stimulus funds to help us help families, we were helping 160 families a month. So it was 1,000% increase per month over that period, which we had to ramp up pretty quickly with a lot of wonderful temporary staff that we found to help us run the program. So.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Again, feel free to ask them via chat, or you can take yourself off of mute.
I don't have a question, but I would definitely want to share a little bit more about Compassion Action Network. I shared the CCU volunteer site. So that network is a grassroots organization of individuals, organizations, churches, that all have a heart, passion for the street homeless. So those are where you heard me talk about our donors, our beautiful donors. That's where they typically come from through their word of mouth, through them directing people to our site. And so they all come together. We have a Zoom the third Friday of every month at 8 a.m. We've now progressed to having a leadership team. We're looking at some of the bigger initiatives like Darrell was speaking of. We're looking at storage as an issue for people coming in from their tents to want to come into the shelter where the help is. We're looking at a laundry initiative. I mentioned that in the chat. People can, like Rhonda was saying, gift cards. If someone was willing to sponsor some of our homeless to get their laundry done. If you see the trash around the 10 cities, a lot of it is because when we hand out the clothes, the hats and the coats and the scarves, once they're wet or dirty, you know, they're done for. So they just kind of toss them where they're at or toss them in the trash can. So a laundry initiative would be supporting that would be great. We recently also do Compassionate Action Network started a transportation initiative. That was one of those last minute barriers that no one had thought of. When they moved our ID site to Enola, that created a huge barrier for our street homeless to be able to get to and from to get their IDs. So Downtown Deli Bread and us were one of the sites to help them get their ID paid for. Although now we just found out starting, I think next week, there's an initiative now free in our state to be able to get your ID, not the real ID, but just regular ID for free for the homeless. But if they need a driver's license, then we're there also to help them fund that to get that ID as well. But those are things that are the bigger initiatives, and connection and collaboration. We push that because sometimes random people or organizations go directly to serve the homeless, and they're not prepared and they don't know you. You could get a mixed bag of reactions from the street homeless. There's mental health there, there's drug and alcohol there. So it's always good to connect with the agencies and connect with us so that we can go with you out there and prepare the folks for your arrival and have a better coordinated effort.
I could just say something about the Compassion Action Network. I'm really excited about it because for years as a community, there was a lot of good work being done on the streets, helping the homeless, but it was also very kind of disjointed. Not necessarily, I don't mean that to sound negative. I just mean everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And I remember a few years ago, we had a cold weather spell and people were calling our office going, how do we help people? It was like one of these times it was down like below zero. And I remember thinking, you know, I wish we could all be organized so that we could communicate quickly in the midst of a challenging situation. And the other thing was that you had groups, you know, that would just kind of decide, a volunteer group or something, we want to help the homeless, and so they'd show up downtown and start handing out meals. There was a story I was told from years ago where they did this and they sent out a press release and the media came and no one came for their food. They didn't realize that right around the corner was a soup kitchen serving a meal, so all the people were eating the soup kitchen. And that soup kitchen needed volunteers and needed food donations. And so the Compassion Action Network came along about two and a half years ago, and really has gotten all these people talking together. So I remember the second meeting we were at, there was this one small grassroots group was talking about a man they were trying to help. And as they described him, someone in another group said, oh, we know him, we're trying to help him too. We're trying to help him get housing. This group's trying to help him get help with his addiction issues. And so they can start working together. And now Aisha, under her leadership, has this like list of 100 people. So when we have, like last spring, when we had the whole shutdown happen, this is when this whole street outreach thing popped up. Like people, suddenly all the human service offices were closed. So people couldn't get help where they normally would go. They couldn't ride the city bus because they didn't have masks. They couldn't go into stores because they didn't have masks. So one of the first things she did was got donations of masks and handing them out, and got all these different providers together quickly. It was Bethesda Mission, it was all these different groups. She listed them earlier. But this idea that now quickly through email and text messages, we can mobilize the community for a specific issue. But also if someone wants to, like a church or a volunteer group says, we want to help people, there's a place where you can call and find out what's already going on and where can we plug in, instead of maybe just, you know, duplicating something that someone else is doing. So it's really an exciting development for our community, the Compassion Action Network. So thank you, Aisha, and all your volunteers for all you're doing. And I also just want to point out, Erica in the chat has been asking some questions about, it sounds like a situation in a mobile home park, and that is not something I'm an expert on, and that has, I know, a lot of kind of legal nuances. So if anyone knows of a resource of a place she could call and get some advice on her situation, if you could communicate that with her, that'd be great. Or if anyone on the call knows. I just know that the legal situation of being a mobile home owner in a lot in a mobile home park is unique.
Great. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for dialing into today's session. We are going to wrap up because starting here momentarily, we are going to be joined on a separate Zoom call with Jim Zimmerman from the Fair Housing Coalition to lead us on a discussion, particularly around renters and the rights that they have. So again, thank you all very much for attending today's session. Again, this is being recorded and we are going to be posting it on our social media accounts and website, and we'll also be sharing some of the resources that our panelists shared with us today. So again, thank you all very much for your help.
Thanks, Marissa.